Now let's talk about your money. Today you're focusing on unemployment, how to get out of it. If you're looking into going to business, this is the conversation you need not miss this morning. And joining me for that, we have James Mbui, who's the CEO of Amico Sacco, to my far left, and Jerry Jarawala, the CEO for Mbui Marketing and a digital marketing expert. Now, obviously, unemployment is a problem that cuts across the globe. In Africa, it's more severe than many other developed countries. And of course, we're going to take a look at ways that you can pull yourself out of it. And a lot of people look at going to business as an option. And this is going to be something that we're focusing on, particularly with the experts on the panel this morning. We're going to focus on funding your new business or your business idea, as well as new interesting ways you can approach your business to stand out in the market. So welcome to the conversation, gentlemen. Now let's start perhaps with your own personal experiences with starting new businesses. And Jerry, perhaps you can give us your experience starting a small business, so perhaps the viewers can know that you have been through this, and perhaps you can actually speak to this issue.
Sure, absolutely. I think it's, first of all, it's important to recognize that it's quite a scary place.
Yeah.
When you first start a business. You know, you don't know what's going to happen. You're taking a risk. Quite often it's your own money that you're putting on the line. But I think with good planning,
yes,
you can always achieve those goals. And I think one thing also to remember is not to have big goals, but also to manage them in smaller chunks so that they're achievable.
So have you found yourself in a position where you would have to start a small business, perhaps, in the past?
Absolutely.
Yeah, could you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've started 2 businesses in the UK, one in Tanzania and one in Kenya. All 4 were very traumatic and to start.
Yeah.
It's, like I said, it's very difficult. But I think one thing that keeps you going is the faith that you have in yourself.
Okay.
And it's important to do your research, it's important to have a plan, it's important to have all those pieces in play. But I think mindset is also really, really important.
Awesome. Mr. Mbui, tell us about your personal experience. Have you been in this position?
Yes, I've been in this position not once, not twice. Tried businesses which have failed.
Wow.
And tried businesses that have succeeded.
Okay.
And it's not easy, especially when you start a business that does not do very well. But many a times it's because of lack of planning, or you get into something that you don't understand very well. You don't also have time to run it. You're just trying to hustle from the office, rushing to try and do something. And so you end up failing.
You're literally learning as you go.
Yeah, running as you go. You're in the office for 8 hours. You are running after 5 o'clock to try and catch up and see whether you can...
So you're talking about the side hustles.
The side hustle,
try to do, even when you're in employment, you're trying to, to set up something on the side and survive. So that even points to the fact that despite having employment, some people still feel the need to get into, business, small or otherwise. Now, I'd like to know from both of you and your experience. I'll start with you, Jerry. What was the biggest lesson that you think would cut across to someone who's watching at home that you picked from that? You've talked about planning. Is there something that you think is the biggest lesson that you did pick up from your own experience?
I think that's a great question, by the way. I think it's really important to value your own time. There are some things that you're great at, some things that you're not good at.
Right.
And quite often as entrepreneurs, we want to try and learn as much as we can in shorter time as possible. But quite often it's not always the case.
Right.
Sometimes we bite off more than we can chew, and we try and learn more than we actually can. And often that learning scope is bigger than we anticipated, and we find ourselves on a journey of learning something completely new, which is out of scope of our business, and we get distracted by that learning journey.
Yeah.
And instead of making money in your own business, you're there trying to learn a new skill. And in my experience, that happened even whilst trying to build a sign on top of a shop. I didn't want to pay for a sign full price.
Yeah.
but it took me 3 months to actually go and find the raw material, then find the fundi, and then find all these...
You're trying to save.
Trying to save money and do it yourself. But actually ended up taking me 3 months to build this sign. And the opportunity cost of that was that I didn't focus on my business for 3 months. Great learning lesson.
Right.
Great learning lesson of what not to do. And I'll never forget the time that I tried to be a sign maker.
Yeah, and you know that then costs you a lot of time, and obviously, so you're pointing to the need to outsource. When
stick to your skill set.
You stick to your lane, as we often say. Mr. Mbui, what would be your biggest lesson from your experiences?
My biggest lesson from my experiences is that most of us who are employed and want to get into business, try to get into a business that does not take a lot of your time. More so, try to go into investment more than business.
Right.
Should you go into business, make sure that you have somebody that is trusted, probably a spouse, a family member.
Who's very invested in it.
Yes,
as well.
You might not be too sure. But if you are leaving your spouse running that business when you are employed, then you are likely to succeed. But of course, you have to keep also helping them so that your input is also taken into consideration even as the business runs. But what again I've learned is that you would rather invest. For example, you buy a plot, put up some houses, be getting rent, but don't run into matatu or shop or what, because you are likely to lose all the money because you are leaving that business to somebody else to run on your behalf.
You're being very diplomatic about the issue of thievery in businesses. People do steal from their bosses, particularly when it's not hands-on. Could you speak to that, Jerry?
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, if you are gonna get into business, there's a massive difference between side hustles and focusing on your business full time. It is difficult to trust other people, but I think it's also important to have those systems and processes in place. I think there is a way to do it. Thievery happens because of lack of control and lack of process. So how I've done it in the past, as I've got burned before. I've had things stolen from warehouses and things like that. How do you combat that? By having good stocking systems, making sure that there is inventory control, making sure that your accounting systems are in place, no under-the-counter deals, you know, making sure that receipts are always provided when a transaction happens. Quite often, as a new business, you forget all that. But as you grow, you realize how important it is, not just some people think that, oh, if I give receipts, I'll have to pay tax. But actually, you know, you're no one special. You know, the government know exactly what you're doing, and quite often they know it before you even know it, because they've had so much exposure to other businesses. But my point being is that you have to have your controls in place, your processes in place, and even if it's using a pen and paper, I'm not even saying use software or technology at this stage, just know that I have 20 items of this. That was the case at 8 o'clock in the morning, now it's 6 o'clock in the evening, how much do I have, and the balance should be there.
That cannot be done when you're focusing on yet another job. So it might be an issue of being hands-on. And given that we're talking to people who are unemployed, or we're targeting this conversation towards them, then it would be appropriate for them to have this sort of systems, because if you're not present, then it's not difficult. You could give instructions, but you can't really have that control. Mr. Mbui, I'm curious to know about your advice on how funding should happen. Should borrowing come into effect? Should it come from your personal savings, if you have any, or should one turn to a circle like the one you represent or belong to in terms of management, or should it just be a question of, you know, the apps that everyone has? How should one approach funding for a small business?
For a small business, and especially when you are starting up, The advice would be that you start up with your own money. Money that you could have saved, or money that you could also borrow from relatives and friends. Because we are not necessarily talking about a lot of money. If today you have 1,000, 2,000 shillings and you go to Gikoba, buy a few nice shirts, and you come sell them, you might make another 1,000 or 500 shillings. You have started a business, simple business. Start small, understand the business, so that even as you think about borrowing, you are going to borrow for specific purposes. You are going to borrow because you need to increase your stock, because you now know that you can sell 10 shirts, and you can't keep asking people to assist you. So you can go to ASACO, or you can go to a mobile lender and borrow now 5,000 shillings, because you are very specific that if you now did 100 shirts, and you probably even employed 2 young men to walk along with you, one take this street as you take the other street, you will you'll be able to sell all those shirts. So you're very specific that at the end of the day, or at the end of the week, or at the end of the month, you'll be able to pay up the money that you borrowed, and you'll be able to be left with a profit. So even for a bigger business, you have this general shop or a hardware or whatever, you borrow when you are sure, if it is for stock, that now there is demand. People are asking, your customers are asking for goods that you don't have in stock. So you are able to tell that if I brought in this item, it is going to be sold. So for specific purposes. Or you realize that you have challenges with transport, and rather than having to depend on outsourced transport, that is now time to get your own transport, and so you can go to your financier, ask them to lend you money to buy for you a vehicle, or an equipment, depending on the business that you are in.
And you know that this is the missing link. If you get
this is the missing link. Don't just go and borrow because a loan is available in a money lender. It could be a mobile lender, or it could be a SACCO, or it could be a bank, or whatever. Don't borrow because money is available. Borrow when you are very sure that I'm borrowing this money to do this, and especially if it is for business. Don't borrow for general purpose. Borrow for very specific purposes. I usually see people making applications, because I look at loan applications every other day. And an application is presented, and you can see somebody says, I want to buy a vehicle, I want to add stock, I also want to buy a cow with this very loan. So for me, that is usually the first red flag, but that is a bad loan.
Now, Mr. Jariwala, how would you approach funding for a small business? Do you agree with this?
I do agree, actually. I think having your own money in business is really, really important. And the only caveat to that is if it's a startup, which is backed by a much bigger idea or a much bigger plan. But in the entrepreneurial world, I think it's really important to have skin in the game. And you have to put your own money first, because then you're going to feel that pinch. It's quite easy to borrow money, like you said, and to have a specific pain point that money relieves is really important. So cash flow is one of the biggest reasons why businesses fail. People understand that I buy something for 2 and I sell it for 4, but they don't necessarily understand that I need to save 1 out of that profit for cash reserves to replenish stock, to grow. Every time I grow my business, it causes me pain. And what I mean by that is it causes pain cash flow-wise, also effort-wise, time-wise. And you have to be clear on that. It's not just about the money. Money does not just solve all your problems. In fact, if you don't have the right plan in place, but you have money, quite often money can amplify that problem. So I see money as an amplifier.
Yeah.
If you have a proven business model, you add money to it, you're gonna expand. If you have a bad business model and no plan, and you add money to it, it spirals downwards.
So you can't just throw money at the problem, as they say. So wait till the business has a rhythm and there's structure, and then basically have a plan that works in order that the money can just accelerate the business and its growth. Now, while you can borrow and have all those things in place, some things that happen to businesses are not planned. Let's say maybe a bad economy, maybe the situation is not just right, a robbery, something could happen that would strike the business in a negative way. And that would be an expensive could also be an expensive mistake. You did a misstep, thought it would work out, and it doesn't. So, and you've taken a loan, let's say.
Yeah.
So how does one approach it? Because a lot of people do not invest because they're afraid that I might take this loan, throw it into this venture, and then things fall apart, and then I'm left with a loan and nowhere to go. And now I'm under zero,
Yeah,
So how do you work out that type of situation? Let's say, particularly if you've taken a loan, how do you work it out?
When you're doing business, one of the things that you must also be concerned about is risk management.
Okay.
You need to manage your risks. So when you have a business, it is important that you ask yourself, what are the risks associated to this business, and how can I mitigate these risks? For example, there are insurances for stock.
Okay.
You insure that stock. That should something happen.
Even if you're doing your small 5-shirt mtumba business.
It's anyway.
Yeah.
But of course,
it's still an investment.
It's still an investment, of course. But I know it's possible because there is micro insurance.
Yeah.
If you go to an insurance company and tell them this is a business I'm doing and I would want some form of insurance, I'm sure they're going to listen to you. Because like a Comba market, for example, has been having a lot of fires every now and then.
Don't plan for that.
Now, those people, if you have insured your business or your stock, I am sure when you go to the insurance company, you will be compensated. Because what they do is that they are going to take all the facts and all the information that is important and necessary, and they insure your business, so that at least when such a thing happens, you can be restored back to where you were.
Right.
Motor vehicles, you can insure. Machinery and equipment, you can insure. If you are a farmer, you can insure your animals.
Yes.
You can insure. Personally, I'll give my own example. I had done a bit of farming and planted some fruit trees last year. And when there was a lot of flooding around November, December, they were all cleared by flood because it was next to a river. I had not thought about insurance. So I lost all that investment. And of course, my friends were telling me, why did you not think about insurance? So I have thought about other insurances, but I never thought about this particular...
Which is possible,
which is possible for it, yeah. So
that's one of the major ways to...
Yeah, and of course, other
yourself.
mitigations is, as Jerry has said, your cash is safe. If you have to... And nowadays, there are many ways of ensuring that your cash is safe. You can decide to go digital, ask people that you are paying me through M-Pesa, so that you don't have to be taking money to the bank all the time. You minimize your risk. Should you have cash, then you have to plan on how then you'll be taking your money to the bank without necessarily people spotting you that you have this routine that every 9 o'clock somebody goes with a paper bag to the bank.
Exactly. Yeah. So some streetwise methods to protect yourself, as well as the more important one of insuring yourselves. Just Jerry, when you look at the issue of expensive mistakes or unexpected mistakes or unexpected happenings to businesses, what would you advise people should go into? Because what he points out would also have to do with knowledge, knowing how to protect yourself. So would you say mentorship, following a certain person who would know more about your business, or getting knowledge that will help you secure yourself? Would this play into that?
I think for me, having a mentor has always been something that I've held very dear to me. Even today, I have mentors I'm surrounded by mentors. I think there's no stopping for learning.
Yeah.
Being in business is constantly being about learning. Having said that, I think it's also about having good management controls.
Right.
So if you know, I mean, I personally believe in self-insuring.
Okay.
And what I mean by self-insuring is taking a certain percentage of your cash flow and putting it away for unforeseen circumstances.
Okay.
So if I've made 10,000 shillings today, I will put 1,000 shillings away, and I won't touch that.
Right.
Having that mentality at the end of the month, 1,000 shillings every day is 30,000 shillings by the end of the month. In 3 months, I have an amount of cash that I'm sitting on that could help me mitigate any risks. So I personally use that kind of mentality because I can use it for replenishment of stock.
Yes.
I can use it for rebuilding a place after a fire, as you say. Floods. There are many things, but I think it does come down to knowledge, and having a mentor is something that's really, really important.
So whatever industry we're talking about, these are things that we can apply, and we're running out of time, so I'd like to give you an opportunity to give your closing remarks in terms of funding and standing out as a business. I know you definitely talk about digital marketing and modern ways of doing business, but Mr. Mbui, what would you say is your final advice for someone who's unemployed and watching from at home and trying to figure out this thing of SMEs or setting up a new business?
Now, if you're thinking about setting up a new business, first of all, think about skill.
Okay.
What is it that you're skilled in? You may have been educated in a certain area, or probably you have an experience in a certain area. You are probably employed in a printing firm.
Right.
So you understand printing and how you can go about it, and therefore that is one way to go about it. And two, think about location of the business. Think about the market, whether the market is substantial enough. Think about competition. Think about where you are going to get finances from a circle, from friends, from your own savings, and so on. And most importantly, think about the kind of systems and structures you are going to put in place to ensure that your business does well.
Survives the test of time, Jerry.
Yeah. I personally think that planning is extremely important, but at the same time, really knowing what your differential is amongst the market. So focus a lot of time on customer research. I spoke to a couple yesterday where they were about to invest a lot of money in technology based off an idea.
Right.
And my first question to them was, have you actually asked the market whether they want this or not?
Yeah.
You know, it was a new technology, something novel that they'd seen happening in other markets, which is quite normal to say something happening in the States or in the UK or in Europe or China and then bring that concept to the local market. But they hadn't asked the market itself. So by missing out...
How would you ask a market though?
Well, you could do customer research. That means like taking to the streets and going and speaking to your ideal customer.
Right.
Finding out whether they actually need it. You can do it on a mass scale. You can use digital marketing for that.
Yeah.
There are many ways to get information from the market, and if you don't do that, then you could be putting your money at risk because you haven't warranted the model in the first place.
All right, thank you very much, gents. That has been Jerry Jariwala, who's the CEO for Mbui Marketing and a digital marketing expert, as well as James Mbui, CEO Amika Sako. Very lovely having this conversation with you. And I think as we draw to a close, I wonder if Michael has a question about starting a small business, because
mine would be purely because I've had a lot about planning. I've had a lot about making sure you do research. Is there a place for gut feel? Do businessmen need that, just a sixth sense that you really cannot put on paper that tells you this is a good thing despite not having the figures?
I would say definitely yes, but also we have this mentality in this region of following our neighbor.
Right.
Just because somebody else is doing it, blindly following is not the way to do it. So yes, there is a place for gut feel. I totally 100% go on my gut for a lot of things, but that also comes with experience.
Okay.
So take it with a pinch of salt and go
All right,
with
so
it.
plan as much as you can. Well, they do say that failing to plan is planning to fail.
Right.
So as a result, I guess that's what happens. But yeah, there is a place for gut feel. That's where we're going to wind up the show. Thank you very much, gentlemen, and Tricks for the show. And I've learned a lot. My name is Michael Gitonga. Take this opportunity to wish you all a fantastic and a wonderful day.